So a video's been making its rounds around the community speaking about modern cartoon reboots like Fairly Oddparents: A New Wish, and TLDR, it's made a lot of people unhappy.
I mean, no one wants to talk about it, but the current bandwagon is the whole race swapping thing they all have to do with animated characters. April O'Neil, Timmy Turner, Velma, etc. Alison Brie literally apologized for playing Diane from BoJack because the character was Vietnamese. Oh, so if a Vietnamese person has to voice that character and she feels so sorry about it, will she donate all the money she made on that show to Vietnamese charities? And while they're at it, it wouldn't hurt to race swap one more movie, would it?
Multiple people within the community have reacted to this video, and to be honest with you, I want to take this as an opportunity to finally have the conversation when it comes to videos like these, so buckle up.
I was scrolling mindlessly through my phone as one does, and I came across this monstrosity, the Fairly Oddparents reboot, and it was just as bad as I expected it to be. Mindless drivel plot lines, flashy art style, and an overt unfaithfulness to the source material.
Whew, 15 seconds in, and you can tell he really doesn't like A New Wish. I will say I appreciate how he did take the time to give out some points as to why he doesn't like the new Fairly Oddparents reboot. Mindless drivel plot lines, a flashy art style, and an overt unfaithfulness to the source material. And I do think that this video started off in a good direction, but the problem is that in 15 seconds, you have already demonstrated a fantastic misunderstanding of Fairly Oddparents. The original show had episodes about Timmy switching his brain with the dog, Timmy stopping his dad from winning a trophy all because he melted it with heat vision. Oh, and an episode where Timmy releases a goat into the world and getting someone arrested in the process, and this is just season 1.
What's the big deal? He's just a smelly old goat.
Who said that? How dare you minimize the importance of Choppy?
These plot lines aren't deep, and that's what I enjoyed about the show. While some people may have appreciated the more intricate storylines that came from shows like Avatar or Danny Phantom, I enjoyed turning my brain off and just enjoying Fairly Oddparents at the surface level. Also, the art style of Fairly Oddparents is quite flashy, at least compared to shows on at that time. An overt unfaithfulness to the source material. You know, Butch Hartman worked on the episodes where Timmy's dad was just around the fairies in the original show, right?
Hi, Timmy. Hi, Chloe. Hi, weird kids with wings. Time to fix the fridge.
Don't get a fan of the show started on the inconsistency of the rules, a literal symbolic gesture of source material. I know this is just 15 seconds in, but I really want to hammer the point home that when people make videos like this, or when people have points like this, they never get into specific examples, and it always makes the video harder to understand, because at least as far as I know, he doesn't give any examples to the unfaithfulness of the source material, nor the specific storylines that he labels as mindless drivel. So at best, it is vague criticism. In fact, to anyone who's been on YouTube for a good minute and has seen videos about cartoon reboots before, this next section should sound very similar to you.
I'm old enough to remember back in Yale 2016 when everyone was trashing the new reboot at the time, Teen Titans Go. Then it was the Powerpuff Girls, Ben 10 reboot, Rise of TMNT, the list goes on. No one really respects reboots as an inherent property.
I also was around during the height of the criticisms of these reboots alongside shows like She-Ra, Thundercats Roar, and of course later on with shows like the SpongeBob spin-offs or Velma that you'll mention later. And one thing I've noticed about the discussion of reboot culture is that whether you enjoy these shows or not, the conversations we have tend to speak about the worst received of the bunch and then conveniently leave out the rest to make the point seem like it hits. But let's expand it out. For the purposes of my example, do note that I'm intentionally using the word reboot as incorrectly as this video here uses it, as some of the media he shows on the screen is a remake, not a reboot, but here are some media created or inspired by older material that people do enjoy. So people enjoy Ben 10's first 3 reboots, including you. Again, not a reboot, but Steven Universe Future was widely praised, the 2011 Thundercats reboot was praised, the 2012 TMNT reboot was praised, the 2017 DuckTales reboot was praised, the 2020 Animaniacs reboot was praised. Not a reboot, but the sequel, Legend of Korra, was widely praised. Lurking through your channel, I see you personally enjoyed the Johnny Test reboot. Personally, I've enjoyed Monster High's reboot, Penguins of Madagascar, which isn't a reboot, Rise of the TMNT, but I do understand that these shows are a little bit more mixed, so we don't have to count them if you want. But the Looney Tunes show was well received towards storytelling despite deviating from the source material and having mindless storylines, and Mystery Incorporated is praised for its storytelling as well. And lastly, people do enjoy A New Wish quite a lot, which is really funny because you picked quite possibly the worst show to have this conversation about. Now, does this mean that reboots are actually good? No, because that would also be generalizing in the other way. The reality is that reboots inherently don't have a quality. They have a mix of good and bad executions, and the conversation on if there's more good bad versions is unproductive and very reductionist if you ask me, especially if you're not going to flesh out your points on why specific reboots aren't great.
These Disney reboots do more than just rip off the original for monetary gain. No. They actively disrespect the source material while they do it. They have to warp the brand to their liking, whether it's for monetary, social, or storytelling purposes.
Alright, so put a pin in that point, because we're going to get back to that later.
Modern reboots, especially in the animated realm, aim to purposely disrespect the original vision, starting off with the fact that the original creators don't want this kind of stuff, almost ever.
Because a new wish is highlighted in this, I want to point out that Butch Hartman has publicly endorsed the show, and this show runs through his Billionfold Inc. production company. But let's hear the example that you bring to this claim.
We've all heard of how Steven Hillenburg never really wanted a reboot of SpongeBob, but ever since his late passing, Nick has capitalized on 2 already, with both thankfully pulling in little to no ratings.
Oh, brother. For the 100th time, we don't know what this man truly thought of the spin-offs. It sucks that every single time we bring up Camp Coral, we gotta bring up Steve. And what pisses me off about the whole thing is that we don't know what he thinks. Unless someone on the team can come out with definite proof, the most you'll ever have is anecdotal evidence which many people grasp onto and develop the foundation of their own opinion of this show off of the experiences of a person who isn't here being unapologetically battered out of someone just because you feel entitled to hear about what truly happened. Like, even the person who could have closed the door on everything doesn't want to speak about it. Why? Because a person died. He doesn't want to deal with the emotions surrounding it anymore. So at this point, even if you weren't going to watch, you probably won't watch. And if you were going to watch, then you would have, regardless of whatever that tweet would have been. But if you're on the fence about this, and one of your biggest sources of contention is if Hillenburg would have wanted this, you have to understand that you have to become comfortable with the fact that you won't know. And whether you do or don't watch, don't have that be what you think about when you think about him. He's done so many other things that we don't have to use him as this club of morality. So I really hope that everyone who has subtweeted about this and about myself, that a lot of you are holding your interpretation of a man who has passed away's perspective alongside a team who may never fully finish grieving about this man as your morality shield, and that's really disgusting. Now, when some random person says this claim, I usually don't care, but when someone who touts themselves as part of this community and values being informed on their takes repeats this dumb talking point, I'm gonna make an example of how unnecessary it is. One, you can clearly tell this was said in a joking manner, and even if you don't believe it, the article states that it was said half jokingly. 2, Hillenburg trusted Paul Tibbitt as a showrunner when relinquishing the role, but stayed on as an executive producer, reviewing each episode, reported by a few sources by the way. He also came back to work with Tibbitt to create the second SpongeBob movie. If Hillenburg was against the continuation of the show for monetary gain, why would he continue to support it publicly? 3, if the main argument against the show is that Nickelodeon is milking SpongeBob for money, why do we make this arbitrary subjective line at spin-offs? Was the video games made not Nickelodeon using the show for money? Was Nickelodeon slapping SpongeBob's face on anything and everything not materialistic and full of consumerism? Was the Macy's Day Parade not for the business of Nickelodeon more than any artistic merit for the show itself? If you're upset at Nickelodeon's ruthless extortion of the sponge that started years and years and years and years before Camp Coral and the Patrick Star Show, explain to me what is the difference between those two types of business decisions. Also, since I'm on this point, from a content creator to another, you clearly understand supply and demand, and I wouldn't have to know you to know this. Here's a section of your channel where Ben 10 content was scarce, here's a section where it blew up, and then here's a section where you supplied more Ben 10 content than you did before. This is not an argument of you doing it for money, because like what I'm trying to communicate to you, I don't know you, so I can't tell your intent. Lastly, you don't need to use a dead man to explain why the spin-offs aren't that great. You can speak about the lack of distinct qualities of Camp Coral that makes it structurally too similar to the main show to gain its own audience, the over-reliance on loud, surface-level humor, which makes the episodes less rewatchable as it all comes together as a very mediocre blur, the unwillingness to take a risk with either show to do anything meaningful or unique despite having a billion-dollar model and ironclad brand 20 years in the making, or even talk about the degradation of certain characters such as Patrick to where you can predict his jokes and reactions to a disappointing degree. It is ironic the man who is mad at Disney dragging up what was dead properties for their own purposes would do the same with the man he's never met are directly quoted. It would be nice if everyone can stop talking about this man that they clearly do not care about beyond this point, if that's all they have to say when it comes to him nowadays.
Part of a reboot is a fan service that you never really have to deliver to the original fans of the old property. You can't just say you're delivering something new for the current generation while abandoning the people who made your franchise what it is by watching all those years ago. Don't ruin our childhoods for your own creative laziness.
As respectfully as possible, if all it takes is for a bad show to ruin your childhood, you must have not had that good of a childhood to begin with. I never understood this phrase because you can always go back to the shows you enjoy. I hope you know that. Maybe not legally, that's another argument for another day. And you can always use your platform to elevate the shows you may enjoy rather than using that same platform to just tear things down. I'm not saying you should only make positive videos, but let's get to your main point. This may be a hot take of mine, but I don't necessarily believe that reboots and revivals owe the old fans anything, because in the context of entertainment, you aren't owed anything. You vote with your eyes and wallet for what you want and don't want. Yes, I do appreciate when shows make callbacks to their prior installments, and it could make for great fan service, but it is not a requirement. In fact, with Teen Titans Go, a show you use quite a bit in the editing of this video, both pokes fun at the original, but has also shown quite a lot of appreciation for the original. The original cast works on a reboot, there exists a whole movie of them bringing back the original story, characters, and art style, and Cartoon Network has aired the shows simultaneously, showing that they do not want people to shy away from other installments of the same show. Yes, it would be nice if they finished up the original show, but until there's enough demand and the right people in place, that's just not going to happen. However, let's get to the true point of your video, and the point that most people most likely had an issue with.
I mean, no one wants to talk about it, but the current bandwagon is the whole race swapping thing they'll have to do with animated characters. April O'Neil, Timmy Turner, Velma, etc.
Okay, let me stop here. While the races of Velma and April have swapped over the franchise, Timmy Turner has not. Timmy and Hazel are not the same character, and I'll get to this point later, but because I have the foresight to see that you're taking the stance of Timmy and Hazel filling the same role, this makes this part even worse, because you're deliberately muddying the waters when you speak about legitimate changes in race and a swap in roles as the same point. Assuming the best faith about your point, yes, Hazel is the main character of A New Wish and has magic adventures with their fairies, like Timmy. So in a sense, yes, they fill the same role. A protagonist. However, what you say in the comments paints such a different picture than your video, because you say you understand Hazel is not Timmy, and then the opposite happens.
Black female Timmy Turner is clearly just a cheap attempt to reboot this property without any other significant pitches for change.
Fusion is just a cheap tactic to make weak gems stronger.
Hazel fundamentally as a character is very nice, very sweet, quite the intellectual, has a good relationship with her parents, and yes, is a black girl. While Timmy had his morally good moments, he was very selfish, got frequent Fs in school if you know anything about Crocker, has a mixed relationship with his parents, has a major reason as to why he has fairies, because of his parents neglecting him and leaving him with a babysitter that was the embodiment of evil, and while this may not seem important to you, Timmy is not a girl. Except for like a few episodes, but I bring this up because if you know anything about the Fairly Oddparents, because 2000 show, Timmy's boyish attitudes and pride for being a boy was very visible in the show. You can look at The Boy Who Would Be Queen, you can look at Love Struck, you can just see that in many Nickelodeon shows in the 2000s when it came to boy and girl depictions. But Timmy was, in many ways, the exact opposite of a black girl. So when you say serve the same purpose, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, because if you mean the role of a main character, that's just how shows work. You're gonna need a protagonist. And if you mean the archetype, you're just wrong. And if there's a third interpretation, you can let me know.
When everything is racial, that's the only thing I can see when watching. I never saw Blade as a black character, or Cyborg or Gerald or Static Shock. A lot of my favorite characters are people of various ethnicities and racial tones.
This is truly the crux of the video, and such a major misunderstanding of, well, everything. But since you brought it up, let's speak about Static Shock. The 8th episode, Sons of the Fathers, follows Virgil, or Static for those who don't know, going to Richie's friend's house. Although they have a great time, the mood shifts when Richie's father comes home early.
Hey, Mr. Foley. Good to finally meet you. Hey, Dad. This is my friend Virgil. Remember I told you about him?
Not nearly enough.
We see Richie's father, Mr. Hawkins, is clearly racist not just towards Virgil, but his family.
And now I see why Richie acts like a hood, Maggie. That kid's a bad influence. All his kind are.
Keep your voice down.
It's bad enough I gotta deal with them all day long. Now one of them's in my house.
Virgil, feeling unwanted, decides to leave rather than cause a scene, and this makes Richie so upset and ashamed that he runs away from home. It takes Virgil as Static and his father speaking sense into Richie's father to save Richie, leading to Mr. Hawkins apologizing for his actions.
Well, I know your kind, Foley. I've seen your kind all my life. A fine, upstanding bigot. His nose so close to the grindstone he can't see anything else. Meanwhile, the world changes and grows, and he's blind to it. You've got a terrific son. One of the best and brightest around. And because of the way you are, you'll never really know him. Richie ran away from you a long time ago, Foley.
Son, I'm sorry.
Dakota Comic-Con opens in 15 minutes, bro. Thanks for taking the day off to take us, Mr. F.
No problem. Tell you the truth, I always been curious about those events.
Since you enjoy his character, explain how you can see this episode and not see the race of Virgil. In being the most charitable to you, I'd imagine what you're trying to say is that you don't hold a character's identity as one of the things you look for in liking a character, but the reason why that is different than you saying you don't see color is that you are, in a sense, invalidating the efforts made by the team and the show that you claim to respect by tossing aside the deeper themes, and invalidating the people who related or resonated with that part of the show because they share in the experience, in this case, unfortunately, by watering it all down to being diversity for brownie points.
Maybe Butch Hartman wants Timmy to be race and gender swapped, which is why he has absolutely no direct involvement in the creative department of the project. I find that unlikely. It's absolutely insulting to ruin a person's original vision of a character just because people want to see themselves on screen.
Hey everybody, I am so thrilled I can finally talk about this. We're making a brand new Fairly OddParents animated series, and it looks like this. It is called A Brand New Wish, and it's going to premiere this spring. When they first told me they wanted to do this and they presented these designs to me, I was really excited because not only will it have the same charm and excitement and flair of the original series, it's going to look a little different, but I really love these character designs. I think they're super appealing.
The best part about that is that took me 5 seconds to find on Google, by the way.
This absolutely also hinders the story and episode quality, as the main selling point here is the obvious element that's right in front of us, but no one's allowed to acknowledge it for some reason.
Which is why when people speak about the show, they're not talking about Perry or Dev or the ways the show has expanded the source material. No, the selling point of A New Wish wasn't that we got black representation. First of all, beyond all the black media we have been getting up to this point, Transformers Earthspark is also on Nickelodeon. I'm sure you either haven't heard of it or didn't mention it because it would ruin this selling point argument. But secondly, if that was the selling point of this show, why was it not the selling point for Fairy Otter? It came out at a similar time as the alleged wokeness that you're implying here, so what was the selling point there? As I mentioned in my Discord server, make sure to join in the links in the description and pinned comment below, the Fairly OddParents is like Nickelodeon's Powerpuff Girls because it's their great concept that can last practically forever, so they're just gonna constantly bring it back. Every generation is going to enjoy the idea of immersing themselves in a world full of fairies that grant your every wish. It doesn't have to be a race thing.
People just disagree with this because it's the right thing to say or whatever, but most people would probably agree with these common sense points deep down.
That one didn't age quite so well.
When a character is good, race shouldn't matter, nor should the new spin you put on the character, whether it's a gimmicky change in the age, the gender, the design more broadly, or their persona and attitude in a larger sense.
Actually, the angle I'm gonna take here is that I'm gonna flip this and say if a character is bad, the race shouldn't matter. And because you spent this entire video not getting into specifics, I still have no idea what you specifically don't like about Hazel. Is it something about her personality that you don't enjoy? Is there something about her dynamics that you don't like? Do you not like the character design? Do you not like the vocal performance of her voice actor? I don't know because the only point you've brought up about Hazel is that she's black. Anywho, jokes aside, this video is long enough, and I want to say I don't endorse attacking him as a person because then you would be no better than him, but this just provided a fun way to speak about reboot culture. If you only go out of your way to look for and highlight the bad reboots, then that's all you're gonna see. However, there's plenty of reboots, sequels, adaptations, non-original shows that provide compelling experiences, make a unique deviation from the source material with respect, and even sometimes provide fan service if that's important to you. We don't have to be stuck in this 2013 mindset where reboots are bad and our childhoods are ruined. But anywho, speaking of reboots, check out my Teen Titans Go video here.